Hi, I'm Matt Hall.
Robby Wignall.
We're here to talk about Intellicross APS buttons.
The APS button is an acronym for Accessible Pedestrian System. It makes it for those with visual and hearing impairments more able to use crosswalks.
And we'll dig into that as we go. Tell you about the system. Now, first of all, I guess we'll get into what you get when you get to Pelco Intellicross. You get an Xbox, one each. Now inside the box, I have gone in here and taken out some paper so they're crinkly, but let's dig into it, Robby. Show me what we have.
Sure. So in each box you get the actual button itself. Get the cover with green terminal block to land all your power wires on. You get your power injection module or power interface module, PIM, that goes up inside of your ped head and brings all of your power down to your ped head or to your push button. Mounting hardware, connecting tools and hardware, and lastly, a quick start installation guide and wiring. All in box, ready to go. And if you order with everything that you need already decided, then you can get this all pre-configured so that once you just plug it in and wire it up, you're good to go.
Okay. So they would bring that in from the factory, or we would do it for them here? Either or. Okay, do that on your time frame.
Yep, depending on your time frame.
Okay, great.
If you've got a short time frame, then it's ideal that we can do it here because we have a good stock, and then we can get out, probably 2 to 4 intersections at any time of 8 buttons each.
Okay, and it just
When the factory, it'd probably be about 2 to 3 months if we really needed something to get turned.
gotcha. So we take that, give them, basically it's a questionnaire, what they want, where they want it,
Exactly, yeah.
and we just program it in.
And that's exactly what it is.
And bang.
Drop the intersection on there, show all the names that you need, any special identifications. If there's a special pronunciation, because these are audible buttons, they're going to say street names. I know there's certain places where you might, such as New York, right? There's Houston, whereas in Texas, you'd be Houston.
Gotcha. And it, so we come at it. That's what it looks like put together.
Yes, this is what it would look like actually mounted on a pole.
Installed on a pole.
Installed on a pole with a sign. Now you can also see that this is a fairly small sign. There are adapter panels that we can put on the front of this to get larger signs as we get all the way up to a 9x15 sign, which matches most places in UTC requirements.
One question we get into a lot when I'm looking at APS buttons, I go into a town. It's always, well, I'm not used to hairiness. I mean, how many complaints do we get? Oh, this thing goes all night. So as you see it there, I can see it on the side. You probably can't, but where's the speaker?
Yeah. So actually, this speaker is actually a forward-facing speaker, and it is the sign is put right in front of it so that it actually sound comes out to the sides. We see grates for the sound to come out of. And then if it is too loud, we can actually get baffles to put on there and quiet down a little bit. The reason that we have a forward-facing speaker instead of a rear-facing speaker like most places is we want the sound to go forward towards the people that are trying to use the system. When the speaker's on the back, it actually bounces off the pole and the sound reverberates in all different directions. Makes it hard to realize exactly where you're walking to and where the button is. Another good reason that we have this speaker on the front instead of the back is tamper-proof. It'd be very difficult for somebody to get in there. Like you're saying, people are annoyed that it's making a bunch of noise.
Right.
They want to come out. They come out with some of that spray foam, right?
Right.
Try to block that speaker. If the speaker's on the back, super easy to do. But inside here, you can't really get it inside there and underneath of the sign, and you need tamper-proof screws to get to the side panel and to the speaker.
Great.
So you'd be there probably for about 10 minutes trying to get the sign off just to try to block the speaker.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Okay.
So,
Good. Okay. Just want to get that done out of the way.
sure. And another thing that we said, trying to locate the sign and the button and everything is very important, as is giving a person direction with the crosswalk.
Okay.
So another great feature about this button is that it has an articulating bracket. So we can see here. It actually articulates just a little screw, 15 degrees in each direction. And this is important because, as people come up and use the crosswalk, if you can't see the crosswalk, you actually need to use that sign to line yourself up to get the crosswalk accordingly.
There's a little more flexibility on that.
Yep, absolutely. So again, it makes it that much easier for people to find the button and to actually find the crosswalk.
Okay. So while we have our tools out,
Mhm.
let me ask you another question.
Sure.
So we have the lock up. I'm going over to my left.
Mhm.
I want to go to my right, so just spin it around. And now it's facing the right way.
Well, no, you still need to make sure that it's lined up with the crosswalk. And you need to make sure that it's on the right side of the pole with the sidewalk, right?
Okay, gotcha.
That's an important aspect. So if you need to do that, the one nice feature about this button is that it actually has 8 positions that it can be put into.
So I don't have to take the whole button off.
You don't have to take the whole button off. You just take off one screw of this arrow and then loosen up the other one. Actually, would you grab me a flathead screwdriver?
Sure, sure.
And you see there's a little slot that we can slide a flathead screwdriver in underneath of the arrow. So now we can take this, and as you said, we want this arrow to be pointing to the right instead. Well, we just grab this. All right. There we go. And then we got it facing to the right. Drop that screw back in there. And you don't have to take apart the button. You don't have to expose any circuitry. You don't have to break any seal or anything like that.
And again, this is a tamper-proof screw.
And it is a tamper-proof screw.
Both of them.
And as you saw, it locked into 4 different places along the way in
Yes.
each angle, right?
Right.
So there are a lot of places where you can't really get the push button in the ideal spot. So maybe, for example, we got the button hole and the crosswalk is down this way. So you can actually point the arrow straight down so that people can kind of follow that, get the gist of it.
Gotcha.
So it is very flexible.
All right, so one screwdrivers, I think, for now.
Yep.
Great. Now, I guess you say it's easy to install, so,
Yeah.
let's look into it and see how do I set it up? First of all, make sure the firmware is correct, right?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So first thing we want to do is pop this cover off on the bottom. Just hold on by 2 screws again, tamper proof with the star key. Underneath you see that we've got our terminal blocks. There's 2 here. We've got one on the left. This is for all of our power and communication to the traffic signal. So this powers up the button and gives us our outputs to the PED inputs to the traffic signal controller if we need to. We have a USB connector, and then we also have another terminal block over here. This other terminal block over here is for an optional external speaker. So let's say you need to actually have something louder, or you need to put a speaker in a certain position to really beacon people towards a certain area that you can't have the button in. You can do that, and then you can output sound just to that speaker instead of from the button itself. Or you can actually output sound from both of them to make it as loud as possible. So that's a completely optional feature. But what we do is we just bring our green connector, which would be wall wired up to our PIM. This is going to be up inside of the PED head. And then with the orange connector, we have 4 wires that come down. It's going to be our walk, our don't walk, our common, our ground, and then PLC. So that's our 4 wires. We get our power to the button from that PED head 120 volt wiring, right? Okay. And since we know that that's always going to switch between walk and don't walk, we actually have to have both wired up so that when the load switches from walk to don't walk, we can still have power at our button. And in order to compensate for that little lull in power, we actually have a large capacitor in here to keep everything powered.
Okay. So I don't have to run any extra wires or anything from the box or anything?
No, not at all. There's nothing extra to run to the button. You can power up an audible button just from a pet head.
Right.
So
There we go.
we plug it in, we see that it powers up.
Where do you see that?
And I know I mentioned PLC, so that's PLC is when we will get to that a little bit later, but that's power line communication. And that's what enables our buttons to actually talk to the other buttons in the intersection without an additional cable as well.
Okay.
Yep. So connected to that, we've got it powered up. We see that there's some lights blinking on it, right? Some LEDs going and everything. So now we can actually connect to it with, so let's say I don't have a laptop, right? And I come out to an intersection and I want to figure out what is this button? Which corner of this intersection am I actually at? Well, these buttons actually have identifiers for each corner of them, and you can actually figure out which one you're at through some button presses. So if I hold this down for about 10 seconds and then 4 seconds, we'll see this little slow flash like that. And then I hold it down for about 4 seconds, it'll start rapidly flashing for us like that.
Yes.
And then it'll flash a certain number of times, 1, to let us know our ID. So now that we know, after that, our ID is actually button ID number 1.
So
now you can orient yourself of where you are at your intersection without a laptop, without anything.
So for 2 or 3, it would blink twice, or 3 times, or 4 times.
Exactly. Yep, you got it. So now we know where we are, we know where we're connected to. Of course, we can get that information through the software as well.
Right.
But
not everyone cares.
not everybody cares. Yep. So we'll use our USB here and connect up to it. And open up the software. Enter the screen. All right, so when you first open the software, this is what it looks like. It looks like a pretty much blank screen.
Yep.
Right? There's not a lot going on. Well, what we can do, there's a couple different options. First thing we want to do is actually connect to the button, right? Because that's what we're doing here. Connecting to the button, figuring out what's actually going on with this button. So we'll hit this connect. It's going to go through my COM ports. You see trim COM3. COM43.
I'm locating the button.
Yeah. Oh, so you can also see that it's actually installing device firmware right now. So I need to give that a second to get it.
Update the firmware to the
Update the
latest.
firmware, yep, for the device driver. So while we're waiting for that and the computer to find the button, we'll actually come in here and show you what it looks like. So let's say we don't have a button. Let's say we're configuring an intersection from scratch, right? And we come in here, we go to new, and we find our intersection, a 4-way with 8 buttons. Pops up, and we see our 8 buttons there. We see our north direction, we see our phases written there, and we see this TSC. We can put this TSC, which is our traffic signal cabinet, in any corner that we want to just give ourselves a little bit better orientation
When you're going out to do
when you're actually going out to the intersection and trying to figure out which crossing am I actually looking at, which button am I actually looking at. To adjust anything, you mentioned sound earlier. So if I wanted to, for example, change the sound for the north-south crossing, I'll click on this tab for north-south. Come in here for whichever sound that I'm disliking as loud. Let's say it was this percussive tone. All right, it's there, and I can come in here and I edit it. And there's all of our volume settings here. And all of this is done in decibels. So we have our max volume at 100 decibels right now.
Okay.
We have our minimum volume at 50 decibels. Evening max, if you have time of day functionality, which can be achieved through different means.
Okay.
You can actually put a schedule and say that, look, after this time of night and before this time in the morning, I don't want it to get any louder than this. And that's to help with those,
People saying it's keeping me up all
it's
night.
keeping me
I'm
up.
not sleeping.
My dog's been barking. Mute it completely, right? Yep, exactly. Right. And then there's gain. Gain right here set to 5 decibels. Gain is what, so we actually have a speaker inside of the button as well. And that speaker is constantly listening to ambient noises. If that ambient noise gets above this 50 decibels minimum volume, then this gain is going to bump it 5 decibels above whatever is sensing that ambient.
So you'll be able to hear it.
You'll be able to hear it. Yep. And now this is all incrementable in 1 decibel increments, all the way up to 20 decibels for the gain. Max volume can go all the way up to 110 decibels. I would not recommend that. I actually had a complaint when I did that once. Somebody came out with a decimeter and said, hey, this is blasting at 110 decibels and it's killing my ears.
Understandable.
Yep, it's very loud. So try to keep it down if possible. Again, that's minimum is 50. If you want to mute it altogether, and let's say, then you would change your max volume to be exactly the same as your minimum volume, and then it'll actually mute the sound together. And then, let's see here. So you also see that there's a long push setting and a short push setting. Right. That's because these push buttons have a different sound based on the wave activated. If you hold the button down for about 2 to 3 seconds, it's actually going to give you a more informational message than if you were to just press it once. And now people that are actually trained with APS systems, right, that do have the hearing and visual impairments are actually trained to know and hold the button down a little bit longer. And there's actually a little bit of a vibration.
Wait to cross.
So you see how we got the wait and then the wait to cross when we hold it down longer. And then it gets the vibrational feedback as well that it was present. So we can actually change how the traffic signal cabinet responds if we do that programming. We can change how the sound activates. We can change everything based on what the actual input is, kind of long push or short push. So we can change whether it's a very loud message all the way up to 110 decibels, or if it's a very quiet message with a short push because it doesn't matter as much to 80 decibels. And now we see all of our tabs. We can change the volumes for all those different sounds for a head clear, a long push, short push, and don't. Now it looks like our button has been updated. The firmware is connected. So now we click connect. See that the button has been never deployed. There is a description inside of it. It looks like there has been some programming inside of it. And the firmware looks to be up to date, which is great.
Right.
Yep.
Very good.
So now we come out of this intersection, right? We wanted to see what was going on inside of this button. This isn't necessarily the configuration for it because I was just creating something from scratch. So I want to click read from device. And then it'll actually pull that entire configuration down from the button. So now we can see that this button was configured in a single crossing intersection with one other button, button ID 1, button ID 2. And we can go through and see it was just an east-west crossing. We can see what all the sounds were. It was a percussive tone for the walk, head clear is a beacon locator, long push is wait to cross. Now let's say there's nothing that don't walk, right?
Okay.
So we wanted to add something in there. Actually, we don't want to add something in there because that's going to be great. So what we want to do is change short push. Let's add something to our short push. We can come in here and first of all, let's edit that sound, make it a little bit louder for us. So we'll bump up that minimum volume to 70 decibels. Hit done. And now that should be saved. Well, it's only saved on this program right now, correct? We've read from the button. We haven't yet saved back to the button yet. So we've changed it inside of the system. And then we want to add another. So we click our add and let's just say wait. And then it'll be a bebop, right? And then we got that. So let's say I actually want that bebop to happen first.
Okay.
I can come in here and say edit display script right here and do 2, 1. So now this sound 2 is going to play before button 1. And now I want button, and I actually want the sound for 1 to repeat. Let's repeat it 3 times. So I'll do 1, so 2, 1, 1, 1. Okay. I should hear bebop and then wait, wait, wait after I activate it. So I'll hit done, save to device, send configuration to device. We wait for it to upload, do this status bar right here. And again, it does confirm that our button ID is 1, as we saw from that LED flashing earlier. Now, as I talked about earlier, we have power line communication, right? I'm not sure, are you seeing that this little pop-up where it says deploy all to all buttons? Great. Yeah, so this deploy configuration to all buttons means that if I have an entire intersection outfitted with these Intellicross buttons and I don't have any other communications, but that PLC and everything's wired to 120 volt, I can actually send this configuration to all the buttons at the same time.
So you want it done once.
Yep.
That's it.
That's it. Yep.
I don't want one.
Yep, exactly. But since I'm not connected to any other ones, I'm going to click cancel because I just have this one button, right?
Correct.
And that's PLC's power line communication and uses that 120 volt neutral that we're feeding all of our pet heads with to actually send our
Wires are already laid.
Wires already there, so why not take advantage of it, right? So we'll hit cancel, and as we should see, bebop. Wait. There you go. Gotcha. Got our messages, and then let's just see here. Let's stop sharing this for a second.
Is that like for the 2-year-old who's hanging on? Must be across the street.
Exactly. Right. So, and then as I was mentioning to you before, there is a speaker right inside of here. It's a little bit small. You can't really see it too well, but as we
It's like a speaker, kind of a microphone.
yeah, so it's kind of quiet earlier, right? But we can see it getting louder and quieter as it hears that ambient noise, as we saw before.
Yeah.
Now, it's not going to gain a whole lot because I did bump up that minimum and the gain wasn't too much, but
Not overpowering.
exactly. Yep. And then we do have our LED confirmation. Again, this is supposed to work for both visually impaired and hearing impaired people, right? So we have the sound for our visually impaired.
Right.
And then for our hearing impaired, we have this visual indicator, that red LED. So we know that a call is in, and then when we clear that call, the LED goes out, and we know that the walk cycle is actually on. And we heard that did you hear that vibration? Yeah, so that's again supposed to help with those with the hearing impaired, so they can actually feel the vibration.
Feel the moves.
Yep, and then lets them know that the walk sign is activated.
Yep. All right, so we got to what it does. Now you have that bolted on right now. Is there any other way to install that?
There are a couple ways to install this. Yeah. So I'm going to actually just power it down real quick.
Yeah.
We went through the software. As you saw earlier, I did actually loosen up one bolt underneath here. And we've got a nice slot in our little demo bolt here. There's one bolt, and it's a captive bolt to the bracket. So we have to unscrew. Once we unscrew that completely, you can actually slide the bottom out and then the top right off. So that's our button. Here's our mounting bracket.
Yep.
As you can see, it's just bolted on there, 2 bolts. We have a line that actually lets us know where the plunger is going to be. So when we line this up, it's usually very important to make sure that this arrow is at a certain height above the crossbar.
Right. So you measure, you put your tape to the bar, to the ground.
Yep. Imagine, wheeling up in a wheelchair to a crosswalk and it being at 5 feet up in the air and you can't reach it. So we want to make sure that that's as accessible as possible.
Yeah,
Here's our
88 buttons, right?
Here's our captive bolt. You can kind of see our notches there for our 15-degree articulation on each side. And then we also have the option of these slots on the side will allow us to band to the bolt.
They combine, I don't have to drill it.
Exactly. Yep. And so all you need is one hole right behind here. Line it up, drill up there, and you see this little slope style here.
Right.
This is so our cables can come out and run down out of the back of the pole, run down, and then up underneath in this little notch here, and then come up into our notch here and land right on that green terminal.
Yes.
So it's very simple. Now, let's say you get a knockdown, or let's say the button starts failing. There's water intrusion. There's something going on with it. Well, this bracket's not going to go bad.
Right.
So I just take that one bolt off, take my new button out there, make sure that
Already measured out.
already measured up, make sure it's already programmed, articulate it in the right spot, and then bolt it on with that one screw again.
Okay.
And then I'm ready to go.
Okay, now I'm going to circle back on a knockdown because I have a question.
Sure.
And you've covered it,
Sure.
but let's just kind of reemphasize. So I do have a knockdown
Okay.
on an 8 button.
Yep.
And I have to replace it.
Yep.
And do I have to reprogram?
Yes, you will have to reprogram
Okay.
because you're most likely you're going to come out there with a button off of the shelf, right?
Right.
Yeah. So it's not going to have any programming in it.
Okay. But when you take the button, it can find itself though, right?
It can. Well, actually, you can help it find itself
Right.
in a sense.
Okay. Yes. Not a,
So as I was saying before, you kind of got to, let's say I go out there, I don't have a laptop. There are button configurations that I just the same way that I found the button ID,
right.
I can actually press the button and identify the button. So standard out of the box, they come as ID 0.
Right.
Let's see if I can do this. We got to power it up first.
Making them work.
Yep. So you can actually ID it through these button sequences. So let's say I go over to a button that's still good.
Right.
Right. Or let's say the one right next to it. And I see that button is button ID 5. Well, I'm going around clockwise from north to the east to the right south. And I see that the next button there on the crosswalk on that corner is button 6. Right. So then I know that my knockdown needs to be button 6. So I need to ID my new button is button 6. So I can come in here.
Wait.
Hold down for about 10 seconds. See that flash. Press it once, press it 2 times, and then we see this slow flash happening. It goes into program mode. So now I want it to be button ID 6, right? So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It'll start flashing rapidly to see that it got that input. Now slowly flash back to confirm. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Cool. That's exactly what I want it to be. It's back in program mode. So now I'm going to hold it down to confirm it. It's going to start flashing rapidly again.
Okay.
And one more time, it's going to confirm for me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So now I know that this is set to button ID 6. And just to confirm that, I can always use the software and connect to it and see button ID 6 in the software. So now it's got the right ID, but it still doesn't have any programming, right?
Right.
But the other button in the intersection does. You saw as when I connected to this the first time, I was actually able to save from device, read from device, and pull the entire configuration down from it. So I can go to another button now. I can do that, pull the configuration down from it, again, if I have a laptop, but I don't have a laptop. And I can, through button sequences, I believe it's a 10-2-3, so that was what we call a 10-1-2 idea. 10-2-3 would actually start taking whatever configuration is inside of this button already and deploy it to all the other buttons. So it'll actually see all the other buttons that needs updates, and doesn't have the latest configuration that it does, and it'll replace it. It's called a copy and paste.
Okay.
And then that button, after you wait about 5 minutes, you'll see this slow flash on the button that you're copying from. It'll slowly flash as it's copying over to the other buttons. And once that stops, you'll start hearing your new button making the sounds as needed, and you're good to go.
So just program by copy paste.
Program by copy paste, exactly.
But you do need a laptop to do that.
You do not need
You do
a
not.
laptop. Okay, not need a laptop for that at all. No. So let's see if I can get this right. So be about 10. So that is that little slow blink again. And then we do 2 and then 3. Nope, not today. Okay, but yeah, and again, because there's no programming in it, we have issues. Yeah. Remember, as you saw, there was a the programming that was in it before was only for button 1 and 2.
1 and 2, correct.
Now we said it's button 6,
Six,
which
doesn't
there's nothing inside of it. Okay. So it doesn't know what the heck to do. We've confused it.
Yeah. So, but yeah. I want to go back to another thing we talked about, was if you decide to go that way and changing how it reads. So right now it's now you're just reading, you're getting your power and all your information over power line.
Mhm.
So now we can get into if you want to take a step ahead and make it work with your controller,
Absolutely.
but I still don't want to run lines, right?
You still don't want to run lines.
Right.
So you're saying you got a pre-timed intersection with crossings, right?
Right.
And you want to add actual actuation in
I want
for the
to throw some actuation in.
So we do have an awesome thing for that. So because of the PLC, that power line communication, we can send the signal that this button was pressed over that 120 volt line, and then installing this, which is a CIUC cabinet interface unit compact. We can actually tap this onto the 120 volt line. There's PLC connections right here. And using these outputs, we can program it to say, when this button 2 is pressed, I want output 2 to close. And then we tie that output right into our PED inputs in the traffic signal cabinet. And you've got your PED activation.
Yep, PED activation without another line.
Without
no digging,
any other
no
wires. Yep, exactly.
All right. Super.
Yep, very cool stuff.
Makes it easy.
And you can do other things as well. You can do inputs to it. You can say, if somebody preempts the signal, and you want to warn people that the signal head crossing may be cut short, or there's actually emergency vehicles approaching, and just to approach with caution, that type of thing. And you can actually put it on the network as well. If you had network capability at your cabinet, put it on your network, and then you can get a health status of your intersections push buttons just by logging into the web page. Figure out when they were last updated, what the last update was, see if any of the buttons are stuck, that kind of thing.
Very simple to use.
Yeah,
Very easy.
absolutely. And you could even send configuration updates remotely as well. But you must have somebody on site to confirm it. Otherwise, it will revert back to its original configuration. And this is just a safety precaution. You don't want to accidentally send the wrong configuration to the wrong intersection. Yeah, exactly.
And mess everything.
Exactly.
Right.
Yep.
And then get some phone calls.
Exactly.
All right. So that's basically covered the information I need. I don't know if you want to share any further with it, but looks like it's simple, easy.
Absolutely.
No digging.
No digging.
Great way to get great way to
Great way to update
your pet safety.
Absolutely. Yep. The only slight challenge might be, trying to fish cable through your existing poles, but other than that, you're good to go.
Okay. But the pole's there. It just shouldn't be that hard.
No.
Okay. Just keep your poles clean.
Keep your poles clean. That's right.
Okay.
Well, thanks so much. I appreciate you coming out and
No problem.
asking all these questions, and hope this was informative for you.
Thanks, Robby. It helps me a lot. So
Great.
okay.
All right. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate it. Until next time.